Hello, Americans! It's election night. How exciting is this? I can't even believe it. We're here. Welcome to UnCut Juels election night journey. We're all about America, the flag. I think it's big behind, but we're excited. Thank you for joining us. I know that there's a million conversations going on right now. And, we're grateful that you're here because we recognize the value of this night and day and what it's about. We've been talking about this for a while. So thank you. Hopefully you all voted. I know I did. Walked up to Magic Castle and had a nice experience with a young woman who needed some help. And we did a little selfie together. It was very exciting. She couldn't believe I didn't work there. So it was very funny. But yeah, it was really great. Little touch of humanity for our weekend and our week. So hopefully you were out voting today, representing what really matters, which is our, the fact that we're here, we're Americans. So anyway, and if you guys aren't American and you're watching from other countries, which I know some of you are from Australia, hopefully. Hi, Hamish. Hi, Johannes. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and trust that no matter what happens tomorrow, we're all in this together and we want things to be better. All of us want things to be better. In fact, there's a song we released that Jessica Childress was featured on for the Musicians for a Better America. We released a couple of weeks ago. And if you haven't had a chance to check it out, please do. It's a beautiful song, Musicians for a Better America. It's called MFABA. And the song is called We Go High, and it was inspired by our friend Michelle Obama, who said that in the last time we were voting 4 years ago. So anyway, so tonight we have a very special guest from DC. So this is a timely little interlude. His name is Elijah Balbed, and we're going to be welcoming him to the program in a minute. And before that, I just want to remind you, and next week, we're going to have CJ Ray and Nick Wendell come and talk with us about the making of Death Valley music video and the production that we did during the beginning of all of this crazy year, and how we had to be very creative about our production experience. So I'm excited for that. Please RSVP. We'll be sharing that link really soon. So we'd love to have you back next week. But for now, we're going to have you welcome Elijah Balbed. Oh my gosh. Welcome. Hello. I'll fly away my flag again. Hi. Welcome.
Thank you.
So you're actually in DC, Elijah.
Yes, the nation's capital.
How's it been going today? How's the day been? I mean, has it been good or?
It's been pretty smooth. I voted early, so I didn't have to deal with that today. But great. I started by doing a gig for Daybreaker at a polling place. So we performed outside of a polling place right here in DC while people went to vote. Not playing for any particular person or candidate or anything, just there to support everybody that came out to vote. And what they were doing was really cool, is they were giving people free burgers and free pizza from Shake Shack and Pizza as they voted, and even just to people who were walking by and driving by. So just a really cool community-oriented thing. And then I played with a guy named Herb Scott, put together a big band. Herb is an activist and musician in town who leads the Capitol Hill Jazz Foundation. And we performed right at the front steps of the Supreme Court building tonight, which was really cool.
Have you ever done that before?
I'm a Washington, D.C. native, grew up here, been living here almost my entire life, and never did that before.
That's incredible. Congratulations.
It was exciting. It was cool.
That was great. How many people were around you?
The band was about, I want to say 12 people strong. And then an audience, of probably 20 or 30 people actually gathered over the half hour we played.
That's great. But I'm sure there were a lot of people running around just listening. Mm-hmm. That's so cool. Good for you. Good for you. What a monument, a milestone to be able to play there, especially during these times.
Yeah. On this day.
on this day. Exactly. So when you did the polling, what was that? Do you remember the name of that organization that arranged for that?
Yeah, it's called Pizza to the Polls.
Oh, that's cool.
Their motto is "Democracy is delicious."
Oh, that's really great. Wow, I love that people are out there doing this. I know one of our artists, Jessica Childress, she did one the other day for a phone bank that was doing, encouraging people to vote. And I was like, this is so, it's just the grassroots initiatives are heartwarming, just to see
Mhm.
everyone. It doesn't matter what party it is. It's just that you're exercising your right to vote. I have a good friend, shout out John Popper, who taught me if you don't exercise your right to do any of these things that we have in the amendments in the Constitution, we lose them. So rights to vote, is a big one that not everybody gets. So it's good that everyone's being encouraged.
Yeah, and it looks like more
Well,
people are voting than ever, so that's great.
that's what I heard too. So how's the sentiment been in DC so far? Has it been did you feel like today was like a hopeful day, or, I know it's been a very interesting race so far.
Definitely. I
Temperature change.
mean, yeah, I mean, there's always going to be those tensions kind of lingering in the air, but I think a lot of people were worried today was going to be like a more tense day, or maybe even a little violent or something like that. But once
Mhm.
we got out and we were playing music and seeing people just out and about, the energy felt great, and we weren't
That's
concerned about anything.
that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you're a DC native. So obviously, have you lived anywhere else, or is it just DC?
I lived in New York for a few years.
Okay, awesome.
Hmm.
And where in Manhattan or New York?
Actually, I was in the Flatbush area of Brooklyn first,
Hmm.
and then I moved to Jackson Heights, Queens.
Okay, cool. Great.
Yeah, just went
That's
up there to explore the jazz scene a bit.
yeah.
I I was able to play my saxophone until like 4 and 5 in the morning any given night. See some of my heroes who I've been listening to on records play at little, hole in the walls. So it was a really great few years. But I just found myself more busy and having more work as a musician here in DC.
In DC. Yeah, I
Mhm.
get that. I totally get it. Maybe can you talk a little bit about, that was the next question I was going to ask you, was what type of musicians or bands actually inspired you? I mean, so one of the things we should tell you, obviously, Elijah. So I'm wearing this David Bowie t-shirt in his honor today. And I will say, hopefully you guys noticed this when you were doing the thing, but he plays this amazing instrument, which David Bowie played too. So that's exciting. But so Elijah's, so do you want to talk about like your instrumentation and like what your preferred instrument is, and then maybe a little bit about just the people who inspired you, whether they had anything to do with that instrument or just in general, or even jazz or not, hip hop, whatever, funk.
For sure. Well, my mother, I have to give all the credit to. She went to Duke Ellington School for the Arts and was a percussionist there, but she played in the orchestra and hated it. So she quit music and never really looked back. But when I was growing up as a kid, she played just all kinds of great music, from jazz to R&B to rock to reggae to hip hop. Just I basically heard it all when I was growing up. And so I was exposed to great music at a young age. And then in fourth grade, they offered uh, the option to pick a musical instrument and to start studying music, but we couldn't afford it at the time. Come fifth grade, my mom was able to save up, and instead of renting a saxophone, she actually went ahead and just bought me a horn and took a huge risk in doing so. And at first, I didn't stick with it. She had to kind of get on me to practice, and I was hard headed about it. But I had a pretty life changing experience where I was waiting at the bus stop one morning and I left my saxophone at the bus stop, and she walked one way and I walked the other, and neither of us had my horn.
Hmm.
And for the next 3 weeks, I just had to basically sit through band class without a saxophone. And one miraculous day, a homeless man walked up to me and handed me the same saxophone that I left at the bus stop and said, "I believe this belongs to you," and didn't ask for any money for it or anything. And the way my mom tells the story is that's the last day she had to tell me to keep practicing. because I took it seriously after that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. How did he find you?
I think he had just seen us around waiting at the bus stop, and he must have been the one to pick up the sax when we left.
Mm.
And I mean, it was a miracle that it was him and not somebody that would have taken it to the pawn shop or something.
Sell it. Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. Wow. That is amazing. And talk about humanity. This was meant to be for you.
Yeah, yeah.
I've lost a lot of things along the way. That's a that's a it's a big one to get back.
I struggle with that sometimes.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's crazy. Good for you.
Thank
Wow,
you.
that's really good. Good. You know that I played French horn, right? When we went to NAM together.
I'd forgotten that, but that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to carry that thing around. Oh, that's a big instrument.
Yeah.
So I commend you. It's not easy, but I did started that at 5th grade. And I remember my parents were not as readily convinced because I'd already gone through like guitar and piano and tap and ballet and all that stuff. And I was like, but I want to play the French horn. And my dad was like, you're very fickle. It's a very expensive instrument. So I hyperventilated until I got one. And then I played it for 8 years because I wanted to prove to everybody that I wasn't fickle.
That's a nice stretch. 8 years is good.
It was good. It was good. Yeah. It was, but I love that stuff. I mean, I love classical instrument and I never really did the jazz thing. So that's why I spent so much time listening to music. Obviously I'd heard you live before. I'd seen you live when we were in DC that night. And I was like, this is amazing.
Mhm.
It's so he does a lot of live performances. Obviously this year has been a little different. But maybe you could talk a little bit about the things you usually do and what we hopefully will come back. But I think for me though, just keep in mind, like when you walk into a jazz place, there's just a sense of what you're about to experience that's unlike any other club or show experience I think you can have. It just has an air about it. And that night when we walked in, I think it was very late and it was exactly what I expected. Just the quintessential excellent music, excellent musicianship, audience attentiveness, like everyone was in it. It's just a magical moment. So, but maybe you could tell me where I was. I don't even know the name of the spot.
Was that either 18th Street Lounge?
Yeah, I think it was the one upstairs.
Yeah, upstairs. Yep. Yeah. So 18th Street Lounge, unfortunately, is one of the many clubs that have closed down during COVID. Very sadly, it's been there for 20 years. So definitely kind of an establishment here in DC.
Wow.
And the performance we did today at the Supreme Court was actually a part of a movement called Save Our Stages, or in DC, Save DC Venues, which is basically just looking after a lot of the venues that are still around, or some of the venues that are still around that have somehow managed to survive this long, but are definitely in danger with winter fast approaching, and the options of having like outdoor performances or street sidewalk concerts aren't as much of a thing.
That's crazy. I can't believe that's gone.
Yeah,
Well,
it's sad.
that's a magic moment yeah. Well, so, okay. So obviously you do other things too, though. Bethesda, I know you have a residency, artist in residence for Bethesda. You want to talk about that one?
Well, yeah, I mean, during COVID, it's just been interesting figuring out what to do and how to survive. At first, I did a lot of live stream performances, and I'm still doing those here and there, not as often as when COVID first broke out. But yes, I do teach as well, and I'm doing a residency at Bethesda Blues and Jazz Supper Club, just outside of Washington, D.C. in Bethesda, Maryland. And right now, my main role there is I'm a guest instructor with their youth orchestra. So I'm working with a few of the sax players privately, and then also working with the orchestra as a whole,
Gotcha.
and teaching privately and teaching at a few other institutions around town. So teaching has definitely been another stream of income with the lack of performances.
Yeah, no, that's a good thing that people can do. And it actually is the perfect time because everybody's trying to learn something as well. So you probably have a lot of new clients, new students.
Handful, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I guess if anybody's looking to learn how to play sax remotely, you probably are the person to go to, huh?
Yeah, I am taking a few students, so feel free to reach out. if you want to take some lessons, sax or jazz improvisation, just in general.
Yeah. Ugh, I love it. I love it so much. Can you tell me what was your first memory with music?
This is a good one. My first memory, um, playing music at least, was one of those mini Hohner harmonicas that you can. It's like a keychain attachment almost, but it's tiny. And my mom bought me one of those before I had any, real interest in music. And apparently, when I got a hold of this mini harmonica, I would compose little songs on it when I was like 4 years old or something. So that was my very first memory playing any sort of instrument.
Oh, so harmonica and harp.
Yeah, I didn't stick with it.
But that's interesting. So do you think that that had anything to do with you learning, like liking the saxophone? Because I mean, obviously there's a reed instrument. I mean, I don't know what a harp is considered. What is that considered actually?
Yeah, I'm not even sure. Um, no, but I do think there was something similar there with them, both being kind of melodic instruments and solo instruments. When I had the choice to pick an instrument, it was between sax and trumpet. And both my mom and I kind of just leaned towards the saxophone. And I'm really glad that I didn't pick trumpet.
I did. My sister played trumpet, and I would pick hers up because a marching band mellophone is the trumpet fingering. So
Hmm.
I learned how to play the trumpet as well.
Right.
Yeah, but it's not that bad. I mean, it's the sound. I love brass, but there's a use for everything, and it depends on, like in the orchestration realm. I'm sure it's just like I said, it envelops you. Some of these things envelop you in different ways.
Hmm.
Give it
Hmm.
impact. Well, that's cool. That's a good one. Little mini harmonica. Who knew? I love that. So now let's talk about, because obviously you're here because we were enchanted with you. First of all, congratulations on your recent win. There's the DC Grand Prix, DC Jazz Prix International Band Competition, and you won it. Your piece for the Karma Suite and your performance with a band of this suite. Um, you won for that. So congratulations.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. What was that? So what is that? What's the DC Jazz DC Jazz Pre International Band Competition all about?
Sure. It's a competition that the DC Jazz Festival put together. The DC Jazz Festival has been one of the biggest jazz festivals in the world, actually, for a long time now, and it's just a really great festival that happens every year in DC that pulls together a lot of the headlining world renowned jazz artists, but also puts a lot of the local musicians to work. And a few years ago, they started an international band competition called the DC Jazz Prix. And I'd been kind of thinking about applying in past years and decided um, this piece of music that I'd composed and or have been composing over the last 5 years. I decided that it was worth auditioning and trying out for. It's a piece called the Karma Suite, or a collection of pieces rather, that I've written between 2015 and 2020 currently,
Mhm.
about the way I'm feeling about the world, about some of the things that have been happening socially and politically, and just the way the tides have been turning in the world. So some of the different songs have kind of specific um, focus points. Like one song is called "In Nature We Trust," which is about the environment. One song is called "Societal Regression," which at the time was the direction I saw society going, which I think it's kind of going a different direction now, hopefully.
Mm.
Um, but we auditioned, we made it to the top 15, and then we got notified that we would be performing live against four other bands who are chosen internationally to compete. And we performed the suite in its entirety. And after an hour of deliberations, after we all performed live, uh, the announcement was made that we had won. We won the prize of $15,000, which was super exciting.
Amazing.
And we also will be getting a headlining slot at next year's DC Jazz Festival.
I just like literally, I was so happy for you that that happened. And I was like, please come on and talk about this, because this is, if you couldn't go to a better person who works, your work ethic is incredible. And,
Thank you.
and I listened, like I said, this, you have to go and listen to this. What he's released are two tracks so far. It's just gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Like you've just outdone yourself. I love it. And the fact that they gave you money and a slot. Ugh, ah,
Yeah, it's exciting, and I think one big reason we were able to take the win was because it was such a relevant set. Each song is again about something that we're experiencing now. Aside from just music, there's also some speech samples from a few familiar voices who have been influential to me, like Elijah Cummings and John Lewis, and some others. So it wasn't just a group of songs that I wrote. It was a whole body of work with a message that's relevant to the time right now, and especially today.
that's amazing. I'm going to ask my team to play a little bit of the video of you doing the performance in DC, because it's just, I mean, so we can see your setup and everything. Yeah. So this is what you won for. Yeah, it's gorgeous. So do you want to tell me who's on the instruments with you?
Yes, that's the EJB quartet. So Mark G. Meadows on piano, Elliot Seppa on upright bass, and Kelton Norris on the drums.
It's just so powerful. How did you choose these samples?
That's a great question. Hours of watching CNN and MSNBC.
Seriously? That's amazing. Really?
I mean, sort of. It was definitely, this music was kind of a conjoining of my two worlds, which is, I mean, I'm very interested in politics, and I've always kind of had an interest in politics, but especially over the last 4 years, I've just gotten way more into it, and done a lot more reading and a lot more studying and watching and everything. But also just been inspired by certain politicians. That was the voice of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez you just heard. And she's one who has definitely inspired me with her just fierceful approach to politics and unwillingness to back down when she believes in something.
I love her.
And then with Elijah Cummings, as I was listening to his speeches, I noticed he had kind of a very musical, almost preacher like way of speaking, and I was right pretty instantly. I was hearing kind of different musical fill-ins to kind of like accompany his voice, and so he was actually the first speech sample that I included into the music, and that's when I stumbled on something that I realized that was going to be bigger than just music. It was going to be something that had a political and social message.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. Yeah. It was really, it's just so powerful. And I know you're obviously being politically oriented. I felt it. Like I felt your message. It's jazz, right? So it's not like it's based in lyrics. It's just it's a way you intonate, like everything about it just felt like, yeah, I can't encourage people enough to listen to this. It just really was thoughtful, like extremely thoughtful. You could tell there was a lot that went into that. And and jazz, I think in general it's funny because I think of it as predominantly improv, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're recording, I've never worked with a jazz artist, so I don't know how this works. So that's just like, it must be like the layering of the sounds, and then you arrive at a certain sound. And so that's why I was like, I'm just kind of fascinated with how you chose someone whose words would translate for you, you
Yeah,
know?
and I think that's a good point you made. Like, especially my jazz music has never had a vocalist in particular.
Right.
So, and I can't sing. So, having these messages through, passionate politicians that if I always feel like if they move me the way they did, I'm sure they would move somebody else. And then adding the musical element, it's just like a whole cacophony of
Yeah.
sound and consciousness that I'm really excited about.
No, that's great. So speaking of sound, how in your mind has this sound, your sound, evolved over the years? So this is obviously your I know you're releasing this under your name. You've done some band work before. I think it's the is it the Jogo project?
For sure.
Jogo band?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've always in throughout my career, I've always played a lot of different styles of music. I've always considered myself at heart, a jazz musician. But these days in the 21st century, that means so much. The first band I played in was an Afrobeat band. So you're just constantly doing different things as a musician, and especially as a full-time freelance musician. Um, and when I was 21, I got the call to perform with the godfather of go-go while he was still living, Chuck Brown.
Nice.
And Chuck Brown wrote Bustin' Loose,
Yeah.
as well as Ashley's Roach Clip, which is a song that got sampled by over 300 hip
Yeah.
hop artists.
Yeah, everybody.
And so I got to play with this legend, the godfather of go-go before he passed away. And that was just a life-changing experience. It taught me how to play in a horn section. It taught me how to react to a crowd differently than you might at a jazz concert. And it was just a whole different thing. I mean, go-go is such a uniquely DC thing. I would show up and there would just be tons and tons of people in the audience just, ready to hear Chuck and so excited to party with the band. Um, and so fast forward a year later, after I started playing with Chuck, he very sadly passed away.
Mm.
And so for the next couple years, I continued to play with the Chuck Brown band, which I still do.
Mm.
But I also wanted to start my own project, which is when the Jogo project was formed. In 2014, I did a residency at an institution called Strathmore. And at first, I was hesitant to present this music. The demographics in that part of town, it's also in Bethesda actually. It's mostly older white people, and go-go is a very black art form,
Yeah.
and soulful, and it was an experience I wasn't sure that demographic might entirely be ready for. But I have to give props to Betty Scott, who runs the Artist in Residence program at Strathmore, who totally encouraged me to do it. And in May of 2014, the Jogo Project was formed, which was my band to continue the legacy of Chuck Brown, but also keep the jazz elements of go-go strong, just as Chuck did.
So when did he pass?
He died in 2012,
2012.
and
Okay.
I started playing with him in 2011.
Okay, so right
So
before.
for a year, and then Jogo started in 2014, and we still perform to this day. We have an EP out, a single, and we're now working on a Christmas song, a
Oh,
holiday song. So,
for the
um,
next year.
right. So just constantly doing things with that, and then also freelancing. So also playing with other go-go bands, and then with different artists as they come through town sometimes.
So do you want to tell, just in case people don't know what go-go means to do, like what that represents, maybe synthesize that a little bit for us?
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I mean, go-go music is a style of music that is indigenous to Washington D.C. Started by the late great Chuck Brown. It's kind of like a cousin of funk music, but it's got a very specific groove. It's very percussion heavy, very call and response oriented. So in go-go, kind of like you see this in hip hop as well, but it's much more prevalent in go-go. There will be somebody who they call a lead talker, which is basically the person that's like talking to the audience. And so they'll be like, tell me what you feel like doing, y'all. And the audience will respond, feel like moving my body. And then they'll say, tell me how you feel this evening, y'all. Feel like moving my body. Do you feel like moving your body, yo? Hell yeah. So like they're all these like calls and responses that
Yeah.
people that go to go-go's just know like right away. So when the talker in a go-go band says that call, you can hear just like the whole audience sometimes respond. So it's a very audience and artist kind of experience. It's not just like you show up and you're eating your dinner and watching, you know, some guys play on stage. It's like a very community oriented music.
I love that. I love it. Yeah. I mean, it's, and obviously you're still playing those when you can live as well. So keeping the tradition going. That's really cool. Good for
We just did a live stream last Friday out of a little record shop. And usually our band is a little bit bigger because of COVID. We did it as like a 5-piece unit. And it was great. It's been fine.
cool. That's amazing. And so Isabel, I think she was the one that was telling me about some stuff too. So, but you guys done that? You did that together at one point, didn't you?
Right. Yeah. Isabel has filled in with the Jogo project. And then we've also done some go-go things together. She also came with me to Russia when we were the first go-go band to ever perform there.
Right. So, so yeah, for those who don't know, I'm friends with Isabel, his girlfriend too, and she's amazing. She has her own band called Isaflow, and she also is in Prince George band. It's a great band as well. You should check them out. But I remember so let's talk about Russia. So you guys went over to Russia, represented America. Um, and so how did that go? Because I also, let's talk about because you've been doing some global representation in the Middle East and Russia. So please break that down for us. How's that feeling? Like, what's it like over there? And is it different than being in America when you're doing these things?
Yeah, I think a lot of musicians, when they think about playing music and the prospects of becoming a musician, traveling the world is like definitely one of the things that anybody would love to do. And I've been really, really fortunate. First, with the Howard University Jazz Ensemble, I went to Japan and performed in 4 cities over there. Um, then I did a 5-week residency for jazz at Lincoln Center in Doha, Qatar, in the Middle East.
Wow.
Um, I've performed in the UK several times with the Blackbirds, including doing their premier jazz club, Ronnie Scott's, and Margate Soul Festival. But most recently, gone to Russia 2 years in a row on behalf of the State Department. And what we do over there is it's like a cultural diplomacy tour. So we're using our music to communicate with people that don't speak any English, oftentimes, and to sort of heal the wounds that maybe have been created from the political differences that the two countries have had. This is something that artists have been doing going back to the Jazz Ambassadors tours through the State Department. Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, Benny Goodman, a lot of these artists did the same thing like 50 and 60 years ago. So we're following in their footsteps in many ways.
How does that feel?
It's incredible. And when we go out there, to answer your question, we're received on a level that I don't think any of us have experienced in the United States. I mean, we performed at Tchaikovsky Hall in Moscow to an audience of almost 1,500 people, which is basically their version of Carnegie Hall.
Mm.
Um, we've and we also did smaller jazz clubs and got to know like their kind of more local scenes as well. And over the 2 years of touring in Russia, we've gone to 7 different cities, and so really gotten to like experience a lot of variety even amongst that one country because it's a huge country.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and that was one of the big lessons we learned is like you really can't judge an entire group of people based on one person or based on what somebody says they are.
Absolutely. No, that's great. What do you think was it like between the Middle East, Qatar, and your Russia city experience or town experiences where you were? Which like what was the sort of biggest wow, like the cultural moments that you're like these are amazing experiences, like were there like quintessential cultural moments that you felt
For sure.
in
I would say when we were in Doha, that
Mm,
was very interesting because Qatar is a very strictly Muslim country,
mm.
and therefore there's not supposed to be any like drinking or anything like that. But at the same time, we're playing at a jazz club where there is drinking, so because it was inside of a hotel. So it was an
Uh,
interesting kind of like conflict of cultures. But at the same time, like most of the local Qataris, they cut you wouldn't see them at a hotel anyways. They would be in their neighborhoods or towns or whatever. But we were
okay.
there for something called Qatar National Day, and which is when just everybody comes out and they're all they have like a market and a bazaar, and it was just
Love it.
it was a little glimpse into Qatari culture that we didn't get otherwise the whole
Oh,
month we were there basically.
yeah.
And
Wow.
we were performing 6 nights a week at the St. Regis Hotel, sometimes two, three, four, and even a couple nights out of the week, 5 sets in a night. So it was
Full
very
set.
hard. Yeah, it was very hard work, but an incredible experience for sure.
Wow. I don't know how that's humanly possible. It must be starting at like midday and just keep going all through the day. Is that
It was
probably?
like, let's see, we would start at like I think 6 p.m. and then play until midnight or 1 a.m. sometimes.
Wow.
Like
Wow.
40,
That's incredible.
45 minute sets. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was a long 5 weeks, but it
Yeah.
was an incredible experience. Something that Jazz at Lincoln Center used to put together, but now it doesn't happen anymore.
Ah, that sucks too. Yeah. It's a change. What about Russia? Maybe the Tchaikovsky Hall thing is probably the cultural.
Yeah, well, again, I mean, just the difference between each place we went to. I mean, we would go to some parts of Russia, and people, were my skin color, and I would
Mm,
blend in. I would kind of blend in with them, and then other parts, and they're very white. Um,
mm,
and some parts that had more, they were closer to like the Middle East as opposed to the further eastern end of the
mm,
country. So some countries, some cities rather, had more of a Middle Eastern influence. Some had more of that European influence. We even got to ride on kind of like an old Soviet style train where we're um, bunked up together in a train for like 6 hours.
that's crazy.
Yeah, some
Man.
crazy
Oh, good.
experiences.
Cool. Yeah, I remember when you guys were going back, I was like, that's amazing that they're going back again. It's just a huge trip. So, yeah, well, hopefully we can get you back to doing those types of things relatively soon. See how that goes.
Yeah,
One of the things I wanted to touch on before when we were talking about how your sound has evolved over the years, is that sense of going from the band to your solo career as well.
for sure.
And along the way, I think, I know you got some endorsements and things too. So yeah, maybe could you tell us about how you went from the Jogo project to your solo thing and what happened along that path?
Yeah, I mean, I think most sax players go through different phases of developing their own tone, and that's one thing I try to encourage and emphasize with my students is that your tone is gonna set you apart from anybody else. It's really gonna tell
Mm-hmm.
somebody who you are, and it's the first thing people hear. If somebody doesn't have a good tone, you're probably not going to want to listen to them for very long. Um, and I do think for a long time I kind of struggled with like knowing what my own sound is because we spend a lot of musicians studying jazz spend a lot of time imitating other musicians and studying other musicians and learning their solos and figuring out how to incorporate that into our playing. But then comes a time where you have to sort of decide, well, what is my thing?
Right.
And I'm 30 years old now. I definitely feel like in the last few years, I've been able to sort of remotely, hone in on what I think, my sound and my approach is.
Good.
And I've been fortunate to visit LA a few times now, which I love your city. Um,
Yeah.
but one of the reasons I went out there was to go to NAM and kind of
Right.
just explore. There's just a whole world of modern technology, um, and there's just all these brilliantly designed saxophones. There's new reeds, and one thing that I was in the market for was a new mouthpiece. And what I discovered was a company based out of France called SIOS, which is an
Hmm.
acronym. It stands for Shape Your Own Sound.
Oh.
And so I tried the mouthpiece. I really liked it. And then I kind of stayed in touch with them and ended up trying a few more mouthpieces. And that's exactly what their company helped me do. I was able to shape my own sound. And
Oh,
so
that's
I have one of them. I have a few different ones, but this is one of them right here. As you can
hmm.
see, it's kind of a quirky color, right?
Yeah, like purple?
Yeah, purple, lavender ish.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
it's also an interesting material because it's made with a 3D printer.
Now
So
you're talking my language. I love it.
so all of their mouthpieces are made with 3D printing technology. And
Amazing.
one of the engineers that I work with and just talk to when I get my mouthpieces made, he's just brilliant. And they're just very detail oriented. They're easy to work with. Oops.
That's cool.
Sorry.
I see you on the TV. TV meaning the internet.
Right.
That's cool. That's awesome. So that
So
one that's actually your is that it's made to your mouth, but is that like a piece? Is that so everybody gets their own? It's not yours. It's like just for you.
well, they do make custom ones as well. So far, I've been pretty satisfied with a couple different signature mouthpieces that I've tried from them. But I think eventually I will again continue to try to shape my own sound and figure
Mhm.
out one mouthpiece that I consider that represents my personality. And I was
Mm.
fortunate to build a relationship with the company, and I now endorse the company. So,
Okay.
so I will, eventually I will be able to have my own custom mouthpiece for sure.
That's great. Good. I love this. It's just, I mean, and that 3D printing, I started the morning talking about earpieces and how, 3D printing for that. It's just like it's the next
Oh,
way.
okay, interesting.
There's a lot. I mean, well, first of all, healthcare, there's tons of use for that. But yeah, for sure, this industry is going to benefit tremendously from that
I think
technology.
so.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome. Well, I know we're almost at the end of our time, but I do want to ask you two things. So obviously you mentor and you teach. So
Mhm.
curious, you sort of touched on a little bit of the advice, create your own sound and develop a signature sound, which I would say is certainly advice for everyone to use it, whether you're a guitarist or, Hamish has his, whether whatever you're doing, uh, have your own sound. So I think that's one piece of advice, invest in you, figure it
Mhm.
out. But what do you think is like overall, what would you, if you were going to, like when you're telling your students, like how to navigate all of this, what's like the number one sort of advice that you give anyone trying to crack into this nut that we're in?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think is unique from my position is that I'm not an inherent educator necessarily. I'm more so
Okay.
an artist that has experience performing and touring and navigating my own career. So those are the
Mhm.
types of things that I try to communicate and try to like, share with my students because maybe their band teacher doesn't have that same experience.
Mm. Right.
So I mean, taking business seriously is is one thing I don't teach necessarily, but it's something I kind of casually mention in lessons. Like, oh yeah, make sure you have this together, have that together. Um,
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's just been I've learned from so many mistakes that if I
Mm-hmm.
can, share that mistake with a student and help them avoid it, then even better.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's really good. There's nothing like real world learning, application of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Like we learned it the hard way.
And then another thing is to not skip steps and to
Mm,
really uh learn to love the process of
mm,
getting better, because
mm.
it's rare that you practice something and are able to implement it right away. It takes time to for things to show up in your progress. So I always say practice makes possible.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's great. It does make it possible. 10,000 hours makes you an expert at something. May as well do something you love.
Yeah, exactly.
Found that the hard way too. Okay. So, last question before we do your final, like, don't forget to listen to these things. Is there a song that you're like, damn, I wish I wrote that. Oh, that's so good. I wish I did that one. What would it be if there was?
That's a tough one. I mean, um we kind of briefly discussed my influences, but I've been listening to a bunch of bands lately, like Moonchild. Have you checked them out? I
Yep.
like Moonchild, Jacob Collier, Anderson Paak, things like that.
Yeah.
Um, so there are a few songs. The List by Moonchild. I almost wish I wrote that. Um,
Really?
Jacob Collier, All I Need, and then a random one. Sorry, I know you asked for one, but
Yeah.
um,
I'm like, you're
um, but an old jazz song. In fact, so the Karma Suite has one of the songs that's out now is called Karma, and it's a nice slow ballad.
Mhm.
And that song was kind of inspired by another ballad by Horace Silver, and that song is just called Horace Silver, who is a great jazz pianist,
Mm.
and that song is just called Peace.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, I love this. These are all great. Okay. Well, I'll definitely check them out. We're going to do a playlist of all of the songs that people are saying at some
Oh,
point when I
cool,
come up here. Yeah. So we
great.
have three to choose from for you, but I'm definitely going to check them out, especially the Horace Silver. I haven't even heard of him. So that's great. So, all right. Obviously, now we're going to, so check out those songs. Let's see what we've got. Let's see what you're cooking with. And then, if you haven't, which I know some of you have, because I'm hoping some of you actually are familiar with Elijah, but if you haven't, please listen to the Karma Suite. It's go to his website, find him, please find him. He's burgeoning talent in the DC area, but we know he's coming to California at some point. I've been trying to work that out for a while, and I can't. I'm not sure if that's working with the world around us right now, but yeah, I
I
would
know.
love for you guys to come out and spend more time. So please check it out. Listen to it. I know tonight's actually the perfect night. So when I found out that he was actually going to be able to do this, because we wanted him on it earlier and he's just been very busy, I listened this weekend. I took a bath and I listened to the whole thing all the way through. And I just and then listen to the live stuff. And there's just so much, like you feel what he meant when he wrote it, but you also feel a sense of like, okay, all right, okay, we got that out there and it's good. So it's perfect for you just to relax and listen to. I absolutely can't recommend it more.
I'm glad you
I hope
mentioned that too, because when you write music with political messaging and themes, you do risk stressing people out a little bit about it. But
no.
I hope that there is that kind of contrast. The soothing elements of the music kind of are the release from the
Mm-hmm.
tension that we've been experiencing for especially the
Yeah.
last 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's most important, I think, and we talked about this earlier, is I don't it's so thoughtful. It's everything about it is so thoughtfully done. And, you know, it's hard to do. I think one of the songs was like a 7-minute song. It's hard to do 7 minutes thoughtfully. Like it's hard to do 3 minutes it's hard to do a minute thoughtfully sometimes, you know? So it felt like a story that you were telling through song. And again,
Awesome.
I just enjoyed it tremendously. And some of it is, you know, I'm so used to listening to people who are really coming at things with an agenda lyrically. And so this one was one of those things that you can feel where you went with it. And, you know, but it wasn't like so in my face. I don't know how to explain it otherwise, but I did appreciate it. So thank you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to my team for helping put this together.
Yeah.
I'm grateful, Elijah. Thanks for spending, I know it's a tough night in DC, and I'm hopeful that we're going to have some good news, good or bad. It is what it is. We're going to make it through the next 4 years somehow. And music is going to keep us all going. So here's to you for your, you know, contributions throughout all of this. I'm so glad that I know you. And tell Isabel I said hello, and hopefully we can have her come on and talk about Isaflows and Prince George one day.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much. And we'll definitely make it out to California as soon as it's safe to.
As soon as you can. Yeah. And
Yeah.
congratulations on your win. That is a major thing. I'm so happy for you with that recognition. So
Thanks so much.
I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud to know you. That's just great.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I hope
Yeah.
this just shows that, you know, jazz is still alive, and, you know,
Yeah,
even in the 21st century, a millennial jazz musician can thrive and survive.
yeah. Well, and I mean, we've been watching, you know, obviously Kamasi Washington and all
Mm.
the greats that are starting to come around now. It's just it's nice to see it. You know, Sarah Vaughan's still my favorite. I mean,
I
I
met at
love
that.
her, and every week I listen to Live at Mr. Kelly's is
Oh,
that's
wow.
probably why I love live music so much. It's just one of the best albums. If you haven't listened to that, you should listen to it. It's remarkable what she does.
Mhm.
She gets her lyrics and you don't care. It's just like, it's
Yeah.
just a vibe.
You can't go
It's a
wrong with
vibe.
Sarah.
Yeah. So yeah, congratulations on the win. Thank you for keeping on all of this. All this stuff is great. So, and for the rest of you guys out there, we'll see you next week. Thank you for voting. It's going to be okay. Shelly Pike can take some deep breaths. We're going to be okay. Ruby Vel, Jessica, we're going to be okay. And Hamish will get you back soon. Don't worry. Everybody's coming back. We're going to be okay. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll see you next week with CJ Ray and Nick Wendell. Have a good one. Stay tuned.